If you believe in a higher power, does that higher power not already know everything that is going to happen before it has happened? God created the entire universe into existence with his mere intention and word. So who are we to think that God would make a mistake? People do not give out this kind of information publicly. To get there financially is to leverage investment opportunities. It's scary. Change is scary. I agree. Neuralink scares the shit out of me. What's going on, my friends? Welcome back to the Conscious Wealth Podcast. Hope you like our new setup. We had to set the vibes right for 2023, and we're back. So in today's episode, I want to preface, if you guys can give me the next 90 to 120 minutes of your life, I promise you that this single masterclass will be more valuable than any class you've ever taken in all of your schooling, and it's free. So I hope you stick around, consume the entire thing, and you can judge that for yourself and let us know in the comments whether or not this was insightful for you. So today we're going to be talking about AI. We're going to be talking about the emergence of AI, how AI seems to be taking over lately, and most importantly, what to do about it and how to prepare yourself and your family. You guys know that my brand is all about solutions. It's all about coming to the most practical solutions and responses to the outside world as possible. That's what we're going to be doing today. And unless you've been living under a rock, you've likely started to hear a lot about AI recently. For example, we have chatgpt that's been going pretty viral lately. A lot of people who have no understanding or background in AI have heard of this or are now using it or have been looking into it. And that's just one of thousands of examples of AI technologies that are currently being utilized at scale, but not that many people know about them. So we're going to dive into all of that today. Number one, we're going to be getting into introductory matters, some first principles we need to lay down, some foundations so that everyone is on the same page before we go deep. Then we're going to get into technology implications, the actual technology behind the AI, and some examples of these technologies. Then we're going to get into workforce implications and just how heavily these technologies are going to impact society at large. Then we're going to get into economic and investment implications, which is probably going to interest the majority of you. So you'll definitely want to stick around for that. And then we're going to wrap things up, and I'm going to kind of give you my perspective on this topic, because quite frankly, let's be honest here, AI scares the shit out of most people, especially my audience, the spiritual community, the conscious community, right, that we're all a part of, tends to view technology as the Antichrist. And one of the things that I hope to do today is illustrate an extremely balanced perspective in which I show you guys both sides of the matter, rather than simply hopping on the groupthink train and saying, oh, well, I'm spiritual, so AI is the devil, technology is the devil. Some of the first principles that we need to lay out and establish before we can have an educated conversation on the topics of artificial intelligence and where the world is headed are Metcalfe's law, Moore's law, and network effects. For those of you who are my students or who have consumed some of our free ebooks and resources, you should be familiar with these concepts, but I'm not going to assume everyone knows what these things are. Metcalfe's law is basically a law that was discovered a while back surrounding technology that shows us that expanding any given network increases its value. Just think of the mathematical example of 2 plus 2 equals 4, 2 to the second power equals 4, but then 3 plus 3 equals 6, 3 to the third power equals 9. And as you get higher and higher, that discrepancy between adding them and squaring them becomes larger and larger. And that's how technology operates, in an exponential nature versus a linear nature. And this can be challenging for our brains because human brains evolved to think linearly. They're horrible at thinking exponentially, but technology evolves exponentially. And this is part of why we're so bad at predicting technology timelines. This even trickles into investments and such, but I'll get into that later. So we have Metcalfe's law, then we have Moore's law. And Moore's law tells us that while capability steadily increases, so that's more of a linear progression, the cost of those capabilities continually drops. So together, when you combine those things, that means that capability over time is steadily increasing and costs over time are steadily decreasing when you're dealing with technology. Moore's law was specifically created as a rule for semiconductors and anything that has a chip in it. So together, these two things mean that continued network expansion is inevitable. When we have technology that's continually improving and at the same time getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, this creates the perfect storm. And then we have this concept of network effects, which basically speaks to this concept of the more customers, buyers, clients, whatever it may be, that we have in a given system, the more valuable that system becomes. So when you understand these three concepts together, we have Metcalfe's law, which shows us that expanding a network increases its value. Then we have Moore's law, which shows us that over time, technology evolves at a consistent, steady rate, and it also declines in price. And then we have network effects, which show us that the more people adopting any given technology, the more value that technology now has. And all three of these create somewhat of a trinity that has led us to the point that we're now at, where a little over 100 years ago, we didn't even have any form of technology, zero. And now we're at a point where we have AI that is so advanced that it actually trains itself. And I think that's hard for a lot of people to fathom. And so I'm going to put up a few different visuals on the screen so that you guys can check them out. We have this first graph where human progress throughout time, right? The tens, hundreds of thousands of years that we've evolved. We have human progress over time looking very much like a straight line, slightly improving over time, like very linearly gradual bits of improvement over long periods of time. And then we have this spot where we are now, labeled "you are here." So we're sitting in the present, right? We have the past behind us, that's the linear line, and we have the future ahead of us, and we can't see what that line is going to look like. But in this graph, we can see what that line is going to look like. And this graph is meant to illustrate the power of technology in how it grows in an exponential nature. So it has taken us hundreds of thousands of years just to evolve to a point where we're right at the edge now of unlocking technologies that are advanced beyond things that we can even fathom. And it took us hundreds of thousands of years to get to a point to where we could even develop the most basic, primitive technologies. And from that time, it's been less than a few hundred years, and we're already went from the most primitive technology, whether you want to call it a printing press or a radio or a battery or some of these really basic technologies, right? Electricity, like the most basic discoveries. From that point, it's only been a few hundred years, and we're already at the point where we have humanoid robots, self-driving cars, and as I'm going to get into, we're heading towards even faster, accelerating pace of change. Because when you understand how technology improves itself, one aspect of the rule that is Moore's law states that every 18 months, which is a year and a half, the number of transistors that can fit on a microchip, which is what governs all of technology, doubles. So I want you to think about this graphically. Every 18 months, it doubles. It's going to look like that. And that's how technology graphs look. If you've ever noticed, TVs get ridiculously better every year or two, and yet either cheaper or the same price for a way better item. That is a very simple example that you'll all probably be able to understand as to the power of Moore's law. That's why most technologies don't get more expensive over time through the company's different iterations. They actually get cheaper. Think of the first cell phones back in the, I don't want to butcher it, but probably 80s or 90s, these huge things that you had to pull up an antenna and stuff. The first ones were like $5,000. The technology couldn't hit the mainstream until Moore's law worked its magic, and there were enough iterations of 18-month cycles that they could create a far superior technology than the original one that cost $5,000, and also make it cost $100, $200. And that is when technologies hit the mainstream. It is when the cost curve declines to a point that is acceptable to scale. And also the technology itself has improved so much that it is ready for takeoff, if you will. And so these are things that I study, but I don't think most people pay attention to. So I know this is a little bit of a different masterclass because a lot of you are used to learning law from me, but this is all related. Everything I teach on is about freedom, and this is a big piece of it, and you'll see why as I continue. So to wrap up on this graph, I'm going to put it up on the screen one more time. We have human progress throughout time very linearly. And because we, in the last 100 years, created artificial intelligence, or you could say that it created us, however you want to go about that, we're at this point where the linear growth is now about to become exponential, because as soon as we unlock an artificial intelligence that can access all of the world's information in a second and can train itself, even if we don't merge with it, we now become this hybrid species that has access to unfathomably, exponentially larger amounts of data, decision-making ability, skill sets than our race has ever had. Like, it's not even close. We're in a fascinating time to be alive. And whether you're like fully fuck the system, I'm gonna go move off grid and not even have a cell phone, respect to you, or whether you're, fully plugged in, you have a 9 to 5 and you work in tech. Regardless, I think it's important to appreciate that we're all on Earth during this time. We're going to look back on this time as somewhat of the most pivotal time in the human evolution, because AI is such a large technology, such a powerful technology, that it is going to likely end up dictating the direction of the human race. And we've never seen that before. I also want to bring up this other graph on the screen, which you guys can see now, which is very similar. I wanted to illustrate it in a different way. So we have us over time in this last graph moving linearly, right? Until we created AI, like I said, and it took us hundreds of thousands of years to have a high enough consciousness to start creating things, and then to start evolving. And eventually we create technology. And then eventually the technology iterates to the point where we create artificial intelligence technologies, and it goes and it goes and it goes. Well, in this graph, this is starting with us creating AI. So you can think of this as our first iteration of AI. AI intelligence started out ridiculously untrained, no consciousness, very, very, very basic. Like, it's not even close to a human. So you can see on the graph, it's dumber than an ant. But as you can see, because of the exponential nature of how Moore's law works and the feedback loops that you create. So for anyone who's not aware, this is how AI works. You write a program just like you're creating, let's say, code on a computer. You write a program and that becomes the AI's, you could think of it as the AI's DNA or the AI's personality, or however you want to think of it. that becomes the AI, is the program. And then that program is going to have many flaws, right? Because it's just a first iteration. It's almost like a hypothesis in science. But it goes out and it acts that out into the world. And then every time there are mistakes, it learns from those mistakes. It gets fed the mistakes. Either the programmers tweak it in earlier iterations, or now we have technology so advanced, humans don't even have to program. We have what's called machine learning. For example, when your Tesla's driving out there, every mile you drive, it's logging that mile and it's training their AI Dojo supercomputer. The name of it is Dojo. So every single mile that every single Tesla owner drives, that AI dojo is training itself and becoming smarter and smarter and smarter. So every accident anyone gets in, every timing mistake it makes, all of those little things get trained back until it no longer makes those mistakes over time. So if we can understand that, let's look back at this chart now. AI intelligence starts out really low level, basic, not even impressive by any means. It's dumber than an ant, but then it's on a very steep growth trajectory. And so it quickly becomes about as smart as a bird. And then in even less time now, it becomes about as smart as a chimp. And then in even less time, it finally catches up to humans. And then we have this very interesting part near when it catches up to humans, where we have humans sitting here going, haha, that's adorable. The funny robot can do monkey tricks. And then all of a sudden, boom, it passes Einstein and it exceeds the intelligence of humanity. And you have the guy on the right going, the fuck? And this is the best visual metaphor for how technology works, because technology grows exponentially, but humans grow linearly. I don't want to get into like some deep reasoning on why that is, but at a very simple level, you can just understand that Moore's law talks all about every 18 months, things become about twice as good in terms of transistors, faster, more efficient, more bandwidth, can do more things while also becoming cheaper. So this creates exponential network effects in technology in general, and that is the same chips that govern AI. So that's about all I wanted to lay down for groundwork. Now we can actually talk about AI and have a fairly decent conversation about it without me confusing the shit out of you guys. Next, we're going to kind of transition into technology implications. So as far as technology implications surrounding AI, the first thing I wanted to get into hands down is the conversation around chatgpt. Like I said earlier, unless you've been living under a rock, you've likely heard this technology's name. Even if you're not aware of what it is or you haven't tried it, you've likely heard it. It's everywhere on YouTube, Twitter, social media, etc. So just a quick background for anyone who hasn't already done their research. ChatGPT was created by a company called OpenAI, and the founders are Sam Altman and Elon Musk. You heard that right. Elon Musk is involved in yet another AI company that is beyond innovating. If there's a word above innovating, that would be what Elon likes to do. So what is ChatGPT? ChatGPT is a chatbot AI software that uses supervised and reinforced AI learning. So what does that mean? That means that it's not yet good enough to train itself. So when I talk about how certain AIs, whether it be machine learning or some of these more advanced AI models that have feedback mechanisms to where they just get trained on their own mistakes until they don't make those mistakes anymore. And they're not like humans where they have any emotions. Once they learn something, they don't make that mistake anymore, versus humans can learn something and still make that mistake. I do want to clarify that. So ChatGPT isn't there yet. It's using supervised and reinforced AI learning, which means that for every given iteration, it's being programmed based on its mistakes to no longer make them. It's being improved, it's being improved, it's being improved. But for now, humans are involved in that process. So how does it work? You can ask ChatGPT any question or task you can possibly think of, and in seconds, it can produce an answer for you that is far higher level than what most humans could muster. It can do things like write computer code for you. It can draft you an official legal letter. So like if you go onto ChatGPT right now and you say, write a validation of debt demand letter to Chase Bank, it can do that. And it will do that in less than 5 seconds. You can ask it to write your school essay for you. and on and on and on. I just wanted to give you guys a few examples. If it's not yet obvious, this is going to flip society on its head. Think about all of the different systems out there. We have an education system, we have a banking system, we have a healthcare system, all of the different systems. Let's use the example of the school system. The education system has not really been modified since Rockefeller created the curriculum. You guys can look into that if you haven't seen our other episodes on that with Brett Pike, but you can look into the Flexner report and how he managed to take over the education system and literally create our curriculum that we have now in colleges that all of you have gone through. He created Western medicine, the current system of law and what lawyers are trained on and not trained on, etc. But anyway, so our school system, our education system, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone who watches this channel that the education system needs reform. It's old. It hasn't really been updated. It doesn't prepare you for life. Now we're in an interesting situation where we have teachers who are assigning, let's say, research reports or essays, right? That was a very common thing. You had to write a lot of essays when I was in middle school and high school, especially high school. Well, now you can literally use ChatGPT and tell it exactly what prompt your teacher gave you, and it will write that for you in a minute. It's crazy. Now, students are currently using the following technique to finesse their teachers and not have to write papers. So they will type in the prompt to ChatGPT and it will write the essay for them. But the problem is, it's probably not going to sound like you wrote it. So then they're copying that entire essay and they're pasting that essay into another AI tool called Quillbot. And what Quillbot does is it turns things into your own words. So in other words, scrambles words, it rephrases things, it paraphrases things to make them sound much simpler and less robotic, if you will. So now we have Bonnie and Clyde, where students are literally hacking the education system, not having to write these things. And there's a number of schools now having to try to adapt to this and basically issuing a policy that if any students ever caught doing this, they basically either get expelled or have to start the year over or whatever it may be. That's a Band-Aid fix though. So this is going to really shake up society, because I want you to think about in the workplace, how that's going to affect things, right? So normally your employer's counting on you doing something, but you can just ask an AI bot to do it and save you immense time and then turn that in. And it's probably better than anything you could come up with. So start to think how this is going to rattle society. And this fits perfectly into the fourth turning thesis that I'm always talking about. Usually what happens during fourth turnings as they transition into first turnings is the invention and innovation of new technologies. And so it makes perfect sense that this decade is going to be a decade of massive technological advances. We're seeing that in the cryptocurrency space. We're seeing that in the healthcare space with things like genomics, gene sequencing, etc. We're seeing that with technologies and AI and all of this. We're seeing that with self-driving cars and EVs. We're seeing it across the board. So back to ChatGPT. Check this out. It took ChatGPT 5 days to reach 1 million users. Now, to give you some context, it took Netflix 3.5 years. Netflix, the behemoth. It took Facebook 10 months. It took Spotify 5 months. And it took Instagram 2.5 months. So I want you to think about these concepts that are hopefully looping over and over now and making more sense. Network effects, Moore's law, over time, iteration after iteration after iteration. What used to take 3.5 years, 10 months, 5 months, 2.5 months, we're now seeing in 5 days. Now, obviously, this doesn't directly speak to this being because of technology. Really, this speaks to demand. But my point is just that things are speeding up and accelerating, because as we continue down this rabbit hole of innovation, of artificial intelligence, things are getting scary good. And when things come out that are unfathomably valuable, people tend to want to download and use them, right? So that's what we're seeing here. And so that's ultimately what initially caught my attention and caused me to start doing research into chatgpt, which is pretty new at the time of this video coming out. Only came out in the last month and a half. Now we're going to put a new image on the screen, and this is going to be a visual for you guys to check this out. I keep talking about iterations. Iterations are extremely important when you're talking about technology, whether you're an investor or you're actually someone who founded technology, or you work in a tech company, or maybe none of the above. You're just trying to learn something new. Iterations are how technology advances. Things don't advance linearly. It kind of goes quantum leap, put it out, get feedback, iterate, create a new superior product, put it out, get feedback, and each time there's a quantum leap, but that's how the iterations kind of work. Dot 1 on the screen right now is the amount of data that ChatGPT version 3.0 was trained on, 175 billion. Now, dot 2 is the amount of data that ChatGPT version 4.0 is currently being trained on. And just so you guys understand how fast technology moves, this product is already in its demo stage. I want you to look at the difference between those dots, and I want you to try to wrap your head around the fact that this is just one iteration in a short period of time. ChatGPT 4.0 version 4 will be able to write a book that has 2 times more words than a Harry Potter book off of a 1-sentence question prompt. I want you to think about that. Now, I want you to imagine ChatGPT version 10.0. Look back at this graph. If we went from that size of a dot to that big of a circle in one iteration, I want you to try to visually imagine ChatGPT 10.0. And I also want you to understand that each iteration is going to take maybe 18 months. Maybe. Now, Moore's Law was initially identified as a law from basic technology that uses chips, like I said, right? So TVs, transistors, cell phones, things like that. Moore's Law never factored in self-training feedback loops because AI didn't exist when Moore's Law was created or discovered. So when I bring up each iteration taking 18 months, it probably won't even be that. That would be like the slowest. That would be if everyone sat back and didn't train the AI, and every 18 months, things would just improve that much in terms of the amount of transistors that they could fit on the chips, and gradually things would improve. But what's hard to fathom, even for myself as someone who researches this, I'm a tech investor, etc., is these feedback loops that are running 24/7, 365. And once you get an AI technology to the point where it is self-learning, Moore's Law doesn't really apply to them anymore. I'll just put it that way. It's going to be even faster. I also want to spend some solid time going into a number of other cutting edge AI technology examples. Because like I said, maybe you've heard of ChatGPT, maybe you haven't, but that's just one example. And it happens to be trending right now. So I wanted to speak on it in case any of you were wondering about it. But there are so many other AI technologies that I've researched, some of them that I use and are super, super helpful. Really what I'm trying to illustrate here is opening you guys' eyes to the fact that I understand AI is terrifying to a lot of people, but I think most of us in the spiritual community, most of us who consider ourselves conscious, who, pro-human, I've just really noticed there's this automatic assumption and thought that when we're talking about AI, we're talking about like a Terminator robot. And we're talking about like Neuralink shit, getting getting chips put in us or getting our brains turned into a cyborg, and the most extreme examples, right? And I understand one could argue, well, if we accept any of it, it's going to head there, blah, blah, blah. That's a conversation for a different time. But what I'm kind of attempting to illustrate here is showing you guys AI is really anything that has computer or digital based intelligence. So it doesn't need to be this thing of going straight to Neuralink or having a Terminator robot that you're tell it to do something and it turns on you, right? Like the movies we've all seen. AI in general are just helpful technologies that are a bit smarter than computer programmed technologies. So if you think of iteration 1 is a coding nerd has to code this technology and then it becomes this app. That's normally how technology is done. And that's why it takes a long time. And then every time something's wrong, the coder has to try to fix it and figure it out. Then they put it back out, they test it, and then they see, is anything else wrong? Okay, let me fix this. They put it back out until they establish a perfect product. And that is how that works. With AI, it's the same flow, except a computer is doing it. That hopefully should simplify some things for you. Maybe open your eyes to the fact that this doesn't need to be all doom and gloom. I'm not trying to tell anyone what to believe. I'm not even really trying to express strong biases in this video. I'm trying to be pretty practical. I'm going to be showing both sides, but I did just want to educate you guys on that. So we're going to put some of these up on the screen and kind of show you some of these home websites and just a quick scroll through so you can kind of see what they're all about. But just to run through the list, we've got anyword.com. This is an AI tool that will do your copywriting for you. So for anyone who's unaware, one of the most important things when you're an entrepreneur is your marketing. And copywriting is what your marketing text is called. So for anyone who has ever consumed any of our free offers, when you land on that page, there's words on it. That's called copywriting. Or if you've ever applied for or checked out the LUC, when you land on that page, there's words on it. That's called copywriting. There are now AI bots that will do your copywriting for you. Now, copywriting is it's a pretty lucrative skill. Copywriters are paid easily 6 figures working for small businesses. So that is a really solid online skill that has been highly in demand the last decade. And we're going to see that disrupted by technologies like anyword.com. And then similar to that, we also have clickable.so, which allows you to create ads in seconds. Now, this is pretty dope too. Clickable.so not only can do text, but it also can kind of create graphics and swipables and all sorts of stuff. So all of these tasks that for many of us business owners, especially if any of you run any sort of online business or online brand, you'll know that these are pretty big pillars, right? Like you got to have graphics, you have to have someone to make them. Normally you have to have someone doing your copywriting. Maybe you do all of that, but these are all jobs that are required for all businesses. And then we have jasper.ai, which is very similar. Now, if you take a scroll through this website, they basically help you create original content and, in their words, create it 10 times faster. So I checked out kind of what they have to offer here. They'll write your copy for you for a blog. They'll write sales copy for you. They'll create sales conversation kind of flows or frameworks for you. They can create emails for you. This seems to be kind of a one-stop shop for anything copy related. So once again, you're having an AI technology that has been trained way more iterations than, let's say you hire a copywriter for $60,000 a year to do all your writing. The AI is probably going to be significantly better. And also the difference between how good the AI is now and how good the AI is in 6 months versus how good your employee is now versus how good your employee is going to be in 6 months, that isn't even going to be comparable. These things are really exciting to myself, for example. I love innovation and disruption. I like seeing the world change. I like seeing old systems get disrupted, right? And that's ultimately what a fourth turning is. So I just wanted to kind of educate you guys on some of these technologies. And in case it isn't extremely obvious, you guys should definitely check these out. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, a lot of these AI tools can make your life more efficient. They can allow you to create a side income. There's so many opportunities here. I mean, shit, now you could literally create a copywriting business, go get a few clients, and you have AI doing a lot of your copywriting, and maybe you're just doing the final editing or something. You know, you can get into the morals and ethics of that, because I don't believe in lying, and maybe that's not sustainable. But you know, you can also do things like create a credit repair business now, and you have chatgpt creating your letters and all. Like, I don't know how to put into words how disruptive these technologies are going to be to every single industry and sector. So next we have AI assisted storytelling. So let's say you're wanting to write a romance novel, you're trying to write a thriller, you want to write a scary story. NovelAI.net literally is AI assisted storytelling. So you kind of give it the vibes, give it the plot, and it will map it out for you. So once again, it's not like these things are going to nail it on the first try, but they're saving so much time. So in terms of the word productivity, these are extremely high productivity technologies, because if they can create your base for you, you have something to work from. That's extremely valuable, right? Then we have a pretty cool one. It's called Deep Imagination Magic 3D. So this is actually created by NVIDIA, which is one of my favorite companies. They are a semiconductor chip company. And basically, all you have to do is write a sentence to describe what you want to see a picture of. And it will turn your text into a 3D creation. So we'll kind of show on the screen right now, writing out a certain sentence of showing a certain something on the screen. And then we'll kind of let you guys see for yourself. It turns the words into an actual image. Now, is this incredible art? No, not currently. But it's not meant to be. This is just a basic iteration. But it is a cool concept, because I want you to think about 5 iterations from now. And you probably won't even need to text it. You'll be able to audio into your phone. I want to see a picture of a purple dinosaur that has green eyes and is 18 feet tall and 9 feet wide. And it will be able to instantly create that right in front of you, right? Then we have Viscom.ai, which turns basic sketches. So like, let's say you suck at drawing like me, turns basic sketches into amazing quality images. So it will get the idea of what you're trying to sketch, and then it will take it and it will turn it into an extremely professional kind of like 2D art image, if that makes sense. So we can kind of show an example of that on the screen as well. Then we have Getmem.ai, which is a self-organizing workspace and productivity hub. So for anyone who's an entrepreneur who's used like different CRMs and stuff, you may be familiar with kind of like different workspace options like Asana and stuff like that. This is an AI self-organizing workspace and productivity hub. So you just kind of add stuff in there, like whether it's like notes or a to-do list or blah, 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 and then it organizes it for you. Like the AI rearranges it as it learns you, which is pretty dope. And that's one of the ones that I'm currently like working with to see how well it can learn me and if it's worth it. Then we have, I don't know how to pronounce it the best way, but Aeva.ai, which this is pretty dope. It's the only one on here that I put relating to music. You tell it what emotion you want your audience to feel, and the AI will compose an emotional soundtrack to make them feel those emotions. That's pretty legit. So I want you to think about like you're a movie producer or a director, right? And you need to put in certain soundtracks, and you don't want to hire Hans Zimmer. You can check out what AI can do for you. Or even for someone like myself, you create online social media content, and you always need different songs for your reels or your YouTube videos or whatever it may be. And you're looking for a certain emotion, right? Because that's the only reason why music is in movies and is in videos and different things like that. It's because it makes us feel things. So that's a pretty awesome one. Then the last two, which we won't show on the screen, but you can check them out. We have smartwriter.ai, which will do personalized cold emails for you that they claim get you 8 times more replies. So once again, because of how many iterations AI can do and how much it can be trained in relation to a human, they come up with figuring out what makes people reply, what makes people open the emails, and they optimize for that, right? So for like email replies, and then they scratch what doesn't get a reply and they keep what does, and they iterate. So that's pretty dope if you're a business owner. And then the last one is runwayml.com, which is another one that I'm super interested in. So for anyone who ever creates videos or anything, you'll be familiar with products like Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere. Video editing, right? So you put a video on a timeline, you can edit it all, etc. Well, this is an AI tool that does precision video editing for you. So definitely check that out if you're at all into video editing and anything like that. But overall, I just wanted to give you guys this full list. And before we transition to our next section, which is going to be all about workforce implications, I want to let you guys know and really stress this. When something of this magnitude occurs, it should catch your attention. And unless you don't desire a better tomorrow than today, you should likely start digging into what this might indicate is changing in the underlying fabric of society. Let me put it this way. If you get caught up on the technologies that are coming out themselves, you'll miss what's actually so important about these technologies coming out and the rate of innovation that we've seen the last few years since 2020. The reason that this is so important that I'm making a full masterclass video on it, even if some of you feel like you don't care as much about this, that's a mistake, and you will understand why I made this video and why I keep talking about AI disruption, innovation, fourth turning. You will understand in a few years. But hopefully most of you can catch on. Hopefully most of you can pick up what I'm putting down. But here's the best way I would think about it. The technologies themselves are fucking awesome, crazy, disruptive. We get it. But it's what they represent. I want you to think of society as a giant bubble. And within that bubble, there's a bunch of mini bubbles. And each of those mini bubbles are the different systems. Some of those systems you may feel like oppress you. Some of those systems you may enjoy. It doesn't matter, but there's a bunch of systems, right? So we have our crime and law system. We have our healthcare system. We have our food system. We have our transportation systems. We have our monetary systems. We have our education systems. All of these are systems. Technology is currently flipping every single system on its head and forcing change that these systems do not want. So I know on the one hand, probably something like 60% of you who are going to watch this are going to be like, screw you, Jeremy. Can't believe you would promote technology. This is the Antichrist. Hopefully not. But I can understand if, roughly that number of you feel that way. But here's what I want you to think about. If technology is what you're thinking that it is, but it's also the very thing that is going to topple these systems that have been in place since roughly 1900, when America went bankrupt, Rockefellers, Rothschilds, we don't need to get into all that. You guys know the deal. How can technology be so bad? How can artificial intelligence be so bad if it's the very thing that is going to shake up, disrupt, and topple the existing systems? Banking, lending, centralization, healthcare, food, all of these things. So I just want you to consider not having such a black and white viewpoint and just sitting with this concept of maybe I didn't give it a fair chance. Maybe it's more of a color spectrum decision rather than black or white, good or bad, left or right. We don't do that on this channel. Free speech is important. We should be able to talk about anything. And really my intention with any conversation is always just to get to the truth. I'm only concerned about trying to get closer towards the truth. I don't have an agenda. I'm not NPC, as they say. This isn't a psyop. I'm not trying to entrain anyone into getting Neuralink. I definitely don't support that. It's a nuanced conversation, right? So you can be both pro-human highly spiritual, and also recognize the opportunity of a lifetime when you see one. This is more disruptive than the Roaring 20s, which I'm not going to assume most of you have studied. But in the 1920s, we saw an unprecedented amount of innovation that was largely kicked off by transitioning towards affordable, highly scalable automobiles. But at the same time, we had so many other things going on, and it was the convergence of a number of innovative factors. We had a bunch of people moving towards cities. We had a boom in terms of people spending money, people employed in the workforce, people having kids. We also had massive progression in television and these different types of things. So we're going to transition now to workforce implications, and I'm going to start to get a little bit deeper into some of the research and some of the juicy stuff. As far as workforce implications, I want to give you guys a few different resources and research tools that you can dive as deep into as you'd like. I just wanted to show you that everything that I'm going to be sharing is coming from research. These aren't my opinions. Most of you are probably familiar with the World Economic Forum. They put out a research report. And by the way, everything is public. They have a YouTube page. You can go to their website. They'll let you know their agendas. That's probably not a surprise to any of you. Most of us have heard they want us to eat crickets and be submissive, but that's not going to happen. So they put out a Future of Jobs report. And I just want to highlight a few things. We'll put some visuals on the screen as well for you. Number one, by 2025, 85 million jobs formerly done by humans are going to be done by AI. 85 million. Now, we'll put this up on the screen so you can kind of see. I'm not trying to give biased statistics. We're going to see both 85 million jobs, roughly, these are their estimates, disappear and get replaced by technology, but we're also going to see 97 million jobs be created that didn't exist before. So once again, this overlays perfectly with my fourth turning thesis that we're going through a once every 80 to 120 years generational demographic-led shift in the way that society operates. And we haven't had one since the 40s. You could argue maybe the 20s, the 40s, regardless, it's been over 80 years. So any way you look at it, from one lens, you could say, okay, you know, a lot of us are going to be screwed. We're going to lose jobs. Jobs just aren't going to exist anymore. They're going to be replaced by robots. Or on the other hand, you could say the jobs that I know how to do are going to cease to exist, and I'm going to have to learn how to do new ones, and I don't want to do that. But we are going through this. I'm letting you know this has already happened since 2020. It's only going to accelerate as we get closer to 2025 and beyond. Out of the businesses that they surveyed, 34% of businesses plan to expand their workforce due to technology integration. And by 2025, the time spent on current tasks at work by humans and by machines will be equal. I want you to think about that. So let's go back to that first "you are here" visual that I showed about how it took us hundreds of thousands of years to even invent the most basic primitive technology. And from that time, it only took a few hundred years to go from that to self-training AI. And it's only going to get faster. We're in 2023, and I feel like when I drop this video, some of you are going to be like caught off guard or dumbfounded, like thinking AI is like this thing in the future. And I'm just letting you know that AI has been here for close to a decade in a very solid, more mainstream way. It's 2023 right now. And by 2025, we're going to be seeing much more of a 50-50 split in most businesses, at least big business. Robots and automation and AI doing things, and humans managing them doing the things. So you want to talk about wiping out the lower class who do all of the jobs that other people don't want to do. That's going to be the first thing to go. because that is what ultimately robots can do. Like, for example, one of the reasons why Tesla is untouchable in terms of their margins and they make other EV companies look, quite frankly, embarrassing, is because they have on their production line, they have robots building everything. And they've optimized so heavily for efficiency that they're basically, I mean, to call them a well-oiled machine would be not even coming close to what they've accomplished in terms of their manufacturing and their efficiency of manufacturing. So you compare that to these car plants like, GM plants in Detroit, where you have literal humans having to set things there, having to hammer things, having to move things on and off the line. It's not even close, right? There is no stopping this. And that's part of the conversation here is like, I didn't choose for this to be how things are going. It doesn't matter what I think. So I'm keeping what I think out of it. I'm just letting you guys know where the world is and where the world is going to increasingly be at a faster and faster pace. So businesses care about one main thing: revenue and profit. And robots are going to create a lot more of that compared to humans. So I just want you to factor that in. And I've made other videos about this where I really, really encourage people to understand and potentially plan for and create some changes in their life. The fact that your job may not exist in 3 to 5 years, and jobs in general may not really exist, at least like low level, like the majority, the average American right now makes about $45,000 a year. That job probably won't exist in 2030. So for most people's mindset, unfortunately, they're going to wait until 2030 when they get kicked to the curb and then have this crazy dark night of the soul and be like, why me? I didn't see this coming. And it's like, what do you mean? The writing is on the wall. Why don't you make some changes now? Learn some skill sets that can't be disrupted by AI now. Learn how to earn money not from a boss now. Maybe. I want to go through some highlights here. We'll try to put them up on the screen. So although the number of jobs destroyed will be surpassed by the jobs of tomorrow created, job creation is slowing while job destruction is accelerating. Do with that what you will. Employers expect that by 2025, and this is what I was just talking about, by 2025, increasingly redundant roles will decline from being 15.4% of the workplace to 9%, which is a 6.4% decline. And that emerging professions will grow from 7.8 to 13.5, which is 5.7% growth of the total employee base. Now, this is just of the companies that they surveyed, which were the majority of big businesses. So think of like S&P 500, like tech leaders, basically. So based on these figures, they estimate that 85 million jobs will be displaced by a shift in the division of labor between humans and machines. So we kind of already went over that. But that's some serious decline, guys. 6.4% in the next 2 years. And once again, things get faster. That's how technology works, especially AI. So I want you to be thinking about 2030, where things are headed. Next point, the future of work has already arrived for a large majority of the online white-collar workforce. 84% of employers are set to rapidly digitize working processes, including a significant expansion of remote work with the potential to move 44% of their workforce to operate remotely. So I'm going to say that again. 84% of employers are rapidly digitizing their working processes. What does that mean, digitizing? Well, part of it is what it's speaking to, like remote work, not having people physically in the location, having them digitally, working in the location, Zoom, all of that, Slack. But also digitization references computers, artificial intelligence, robotics, AI processes. So digitization, just think becoming more digital. So 84%, guys. Like I said, this is infiltrating every single sector. And I know there's a lot that I'm not saying. I'm leaving a lot to read between the lines, but I'm letting you know that none of this is my opinion. These are facts. And as a technology investor, heavily, this is happening at a scale that I can assure you most of you don't understand. I don't care what type of business in what type of sector you're talking about. Technology is currently disrupting it. And any companies that are not getting on board with this will be left behind. Because of how network effects work, if you're competing in the business marketplace, which is what business is, it's a competition against your competitors, and one, or let's say the top 10% of that sector are aggressively reinvesting in research and development, automation, artificial intelligence, technology processes, etc., and 90% aren't, and they're like, we're a fast food chain, we don't need AI, they're going to be left in the dust, because it's not just about AI. It trickles into profits, it trickles into margins, it trickles into not having to deal with as many humans, which lowers complexity, and on and on and on. So just remember this video, and we'll see how it ages, and we'll revisit it in 2025. So the last thing from this WEF report, and by the way, guys, we're going to have all the links in the show notes for you guys, because like I said, this is a masterclass. This isn't my normal short video. Actually, who am I kidding? My videos are never short, but this is going to be, more thorough, probably going to land around 2 hours or so. We're going to have the WEF report there for you guys. We're going to link everything that we show in this episode in the show notes, so you guys can research yourself. We'll also link the AI report that I'm going to be going into. Last thing here in the WEF report, it says, in the absence of proactive efforts, inequality is likely to be exacerbated by the dual impact of technology and the pandemic recession. Jobs held by lower wage workers, women, and younger workers were more deeply impacted by the economic contraction. Comparing the impact of the global financial crisis of 2008 on individuals with lower education levels, okay, so the low and working class, to the impact of the COVID-19 crisis, the impact today is far more significant and more likely to deepen existing inequalities. I'll say that last part again. The impact today is far more significant and likely to deepen existing inequalities. This is a cornerstone, pivotal point that occurs in every fourth turning. The left and the right polarized. Sometimes men and women polarized. Sometimes races polarized. Definitely the rich and the poor polarized. Things become extreme. Imbalances and inequality becomes extreme. We're seeing that since 2020. They tried to pump money into the system. All it did was create more inequality because it flows up to the rich, because the poor don't have financial literacy and they spend the money. And where do they spend the money? They buy things from the companies of the rich, so it flows up to the rich. Of course. So we're seeing this with AI as well. So these are complicated conversations. It's not as easy to solve things like inequality as you think. So even with the introduction of AI, one thing that we're clearly going to be seeing here is, once again, as I mentioned, because of the jobs that AI is going to replace, it's going to put the lower class out of work first. Because if you have higher level skill sets, it's going to be harder for AI to replace that, especially things that involve right brain stuff, creativity, leadership, decision-making, innovation, stuff like that is harder versus tasks, labor, trainable things, repetitive things, logical things, anything that can be turned into a standard operating procedure, basically. So we will transition from that. Now I want to show you guys an incredible tool, just in case you're not sold and you're thinking, a lot of this sounds great, Jeremy, but I haven't seen too much proof and I don't understand how I would even look into this for myself. So I'm about to reveal to you something that I've only ever shown our private LUC members, which is a gem of a gem, and that is Quantum Run AI. All right, so this is a website called quantumrun.com, and this is an AI aggregated website that is a hell of a gem. So I'm happy to give this to you guys. Once again, I want everyone to win, and I've never seen this given out. I'll just put it that way. So there's two main tools I want to show you guys that you can use here. Number one is a future timeline tool that you'll see right here. So now you can see by year things are sorted. Let me show you guys 2025. How about this? 76% of financial institutions globally have increasingly used cryptocurrency or blockchain technologies since 2022 as a hedge against inflation, form of payment, and for lending and borrowing. Very ironic because they won't tell you that. They'll tell you they're not touching the stuff, don't touch the stuff, and then they're buying it all from you. 90% of companies have seen revenue from intelligent AI-powered services increase since 2022. I'm literally showing you guys what you can't see behind the scenes, and this is part of how I have such an unfair advantage as an investor. We'll get to the investing part, but I just wanted to show you guys some of this. 87% identify intelligent products and services as crucial to their business strategies. Then we have 30% of corporate audits. We're talking audits. So now doing things that CPAs do, doing things that IRS workers do. 30% of corporate audits will be performed by artificial intelligence. This is 2 years away. Smart kitchens turn cooking into an interactive experience. Electronic devices can be charged using Wi-Fi. Drone usage, automated construction crews, robotic mind-controlled prosthetics, so that's kind of like Neuralink. Solar panel cost decreases because of Moore's Law. You can see stuff about EVs or autonomous vehicles. All sorts of good stuff, right? So this is one way in which you can start to try to study the future. Another awesome gem here is if you go to the special series, you're going to see all these specific areas, right? So we see the pictures should load. We see artificial intelligence, the future of cities, the future of climate change, computers, crime, education, energy, food, health, law, retail, the economy, the internet, transportation, work. Let's look at that. 47% of jobs are about to disappear, right? How do I come up with this stuff? Well, I study. Self-driving cars, trucks, and planes will become a reality in less than a decade, right? Future of AI, right? So you can read about all of this stuff. Within 30 years, 70% of humanity will live in cities. There's all sorts of good stuff that can be learned. I just wanted to show you those two cool tools. All you have to do is click on one of these and it will take you to all sorts of different articles, links, and research that you can start to go down rabbit holes of. And then of course, you don't only want to use this website. So this would just be to get you started and give you ideas, and then you can go research elsewhere. But this is an excellent data aggregation tool, and I highly recommend it, especially for those of you who are interested in staying ahead and staying prepared for what's coming down the pipeline. Because I can assure you, your government is not going to tell you, and the people who are going to benefit most from catching you off guard are not going to tell you. So, you know, I like to go out on a limb and share these things with you guys, and I hope that you take them seriously and receive them, understanding that I have your best interests at heart. I'm not trying to push any agenda. I just want everyone to be educated and to be able to make their own decisions. We made it to part 4, last section before we kind of conclude and bring everything together at what we're really getting at here. So we're going to go into economic and investing implications of everything that I'm bringing up. first things first, I definitely want to dive into these two of my theories, if you will. So I'm sure you guys have heard this overpopulation narrative. Unless your head's been buried in the sand the last 2 decades, you've likely heard and maybe even repeated this notion of like, there's too many people in the world. That's the reason there's climate change and all of this stuff, right? I'm not trying to get into political debates. I'm just saying you've probably heard that. So I want to show you a few graphs. We're going to put them up on the screen, which demonstrate that not only are we not dealing with overpopulation, but we're actually aggressively spiraling into a period where underpopulation and advancement of the human species is going to be our biggest threat. Now, I know a lot of people don't think in these ways because they're so stuck in the day-to-day, fight or flight, got to pay my rent, bills, etc. But those who do run the world spend all of their time thinking about these things. And that's why many of us are so easy to manipulate. So I ask that you do your best to zoom out a little bit. And even though this isn't directly affecting you tomorrow, it is a serious issue. And I bring this up because it ties into AI. So we're going to put this graph on the screen for you guys to check out. So you can see this is straight from Our World in Data, and you can check out the sources on your own. But this is a graph of the world population growth from 1700 all the way to 2100. And you can see that our population growth peaked in about the 1950s, 1960 region at 2.1% growth. And since then, we've been in a steep decline. Now, currently our population growth, when this was taken around 2019, is about 1%, but it came straight down from 2.1 to 1%. And we're heading down at this trajectory to about crossing into the negative range around 2100. So we're less than 80 years from that, from a space in which the human race is not growing in terms of population. Now, I'm going to show you another graph as well, which is a bit more zoomed in. So instead of going from 1700 up until now, we can look at it from right when we peaked. So the 1950 to 1960 range, you can see we peaked, and then we're coming down, down, down. Right where the red ends is where we are. And if things continue, you see that we will be coming down. So I brought this up even though it's not directly related to AI. Why am I showing this? Because there's these really strong, clever narratives, things like overpopulation that a lot of people just hear. They're like, oh yeah, it makes sense. See, there's so many people, so it must be overpopulated. And they don't ever look into the data and do their own research. And so I'm showing you objectively that that is simply not true. Our bigger issue is underpopulation. People are having less kids. We haven't had a demographic boom since the baby boomers. The more that the standard of living increases and the more that AI infiltrates our lives, the less kids people are having. So this is a larger issue than a lot of people think. Now, our population growth peaked after World War II because the world saw an immense amount of both economic growth and also innovation and a strong desire to have kids. After, imagine going to war, you come back, you probably want to have kids, you appreciate family. And keep in mind that the first turning of this last whole cycle started in 1945 with the signing of the Bretton Woods Agreement. So times were the best they had ever been up until that point, especially for the US. So of course, demographics peaked. We had the whole free love movement in the 60s. Globalization was reaching new highs. We had advances in technology, travel, living standards rose. Inflation started to come back down a bit. We had a lot of kids back then, and this is what created the baby boom generation. Since that time, though, we've been in a steep decline in terms of population growth rate, and we're on track to dip into the decline territory in the next 100 years. So why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up because our population and demographic declines in every generation since the baby boomer generation is coinciding with AI and the rise of AI, technology, and living standards in a way that poses a very unique situation for the economy and life in general. We already know that AI is set to replace 47% of the workplace in the next 2 decades, and that 85 million of them will be in the next 2 years. At the same time, there has never been more money in circulation, wealth available, or resources available on Earth. Yet we're having notably less children, while at the same time, AI is taking over, and many of the jobs and industries that it's taking over are the ones that most average working class and lower class people have worked for the last 100 years, since the 1920s boom. We're entering a political and economic environment in which people are not prepared for what is coming. And that's why I'm making this video. Once again, you may find yourself in a position where the government eventually proposes UBI, Universal Basic Income, to you and to all of the what we call chattel, the common folk. And all of them jump at the notion, just like they did in 2020 for the stimulus. Everyone was there. Sign me up, send me my check, couldn't wait to spend it. No one read the fine print. No one understands what it means to accept privileges in exchange for your rights. And that's exactly what UBI will come with, and why I believe it is a probable candidate for one of the scenarios playing out in the remainder of this decade. I want you to imagine a world where you no longer had to work or trade your time for money at all. The government will actually pay you to stay home, own nothing, and be happy. I don't think that world is too far-fetched, if I'm being honest. And I'm not trying to scare anyone. I don't have any negative views about the future. I'm just letting you know I don't view that as very far-fetched in the research that I've done. If we have half of the workforce having their jobs taken, and human nature, IQ, and competency tends to exist on a bell curve, we can't expect everyone to become more and massively develop themselves, personally develop themselves, skill sets, etc., to become more competitive in the workplace. I don't think that's a realistic conversation we can have, to just say, well, everyone needs to, learn new things, become better, do better. Not everyone is interested in that. Not everyone will do that. It makes sense to me that the government is preparing people slowly for a world in which they're sold on how easy things will be because they don't have to work. But at what cost? If you let another man feed your family, then another man can starve your family. And I want you to really think about that. This is a scary place that many people may find themselves in which daddy has ultimate control over what you do, say, take, don't say, etc., or else you'll lose your benefits. And I share this with you all to give you a balanced perspective. Remember earlier in this episode where some of you may have been thinking, oh, he's pro AI, he's a psyop. Well, here's the other side of the coin. I see both sides. I understand both sides. I try to be a very practical person. So to me, this isn't negative. This isn't scary. We create our reality. I need you to understand that. So my reality and everyone I care about, their reality isn't going to look like that because that's what I do. That's what I'm here for. I'm not going to let that happen. Everyone around me is and will be aware and prepared. But that doesn't mean that many people's won't look like that at some point in the future. And once again, that's why I'm making videos like this. So please, if you find this valuable, if you found this eye-opening, please share this with your friends, share this with your family, share this with your loved ones, share this with someone who's stuck in a job they don't like. It's important that more people have access to this information. I do not want to be one of the only ones who is prepared for what's coming down the pipeline. So these are things to consider because of how significantly AI is going to solve problems. It's going to remove the need for human-related labor entirely. With enough iterations, it's only a matter of time. So most people are so stuck in their fight or flight nervous system that they can't even think past next week or next month or paying rent. And so they don't stand a chance of seeing this coming. And that is a big piece as to how and why people continue to be oppressed, controlled, and manipulated so easily. Because when you're stuck in the rat race, you don't have time to come up for air. Your nervous system doesn't have the space to see expansively. You just have to focus on surviving. So my message is pretty simple. Please have an open mind to what I'm sharing today and understand while I'm not spoon feeding you, I am making you aware and hopefully a little bit more educated on what's coming down the pipeline, how you can prepare yourself, and things to start researching and taking seriously. Because I can assure you, if you treat this like a motivational video, you're feeling good, and then you go back to your life, you're going to experience a deep, deep regret in the future if you do not make changes and you are one of the people I'm describing who does currently work a job and does desire freedom. The last thing I'm going to bring up in this section is I want to show you guys a McKinsey report. McKinsey is one of the leading AI researchers. They kind of do surveying and studying of big B businesses. So we'll have that linked in the show notes, and we'll also bring up some different graphs and stuff. In the last 5 years in this McKinsey AI report that they do, AI adoption has more than doubled. In 2017, 20% of businesses surveyed reported using AI within their enterprise. 20%. Okay. As of December 2022, this report just came out, hot off the press. That number is now at 50%. 50. So 2.5x. Reporting AI use as a valuable aspect of their enterprise. So in 5 years, we went from 20% to 50%. Where will we be in another 3? 5 years ago, 40% of businesses surveyed reported having allocated at least 5% of their digital spend budget to AI-related investments. So 5%. Today, that number is greater than 50%. So it went from 40% to 50% are increasing their allocation to AI. When surveyed about the next 3 years, so 2023, 2024, 2025, 63% of businesses surveyed reported that they will be notably allocating more of their digital spend to AI-related investments. 63%. So we're seeing where things are headed. Obviously, I've gone over a lot of different angles. It's probably not surprising to you, but I'm just showing you the back end, the hard data. So we'll put a little graph up on the screen. This is the share of respondents who say that their organizations have adopted AI. So we can see that in 2017, that number was only 20%, as I talked about. And by 2022, we're hovering at a nice 50%. So that's a 2.5x. So I don't want to spend too much time on this report, but I did want to give you guys some of the hard stats. This McKinsey report was really, really good. They are no bullshit. They spend a lot of time and are extremely thorough in the businesses that they survey and how long they survey them, screening for bias and all of that. And I think the biggest takeaway for me in this was businesses going from in 2017 having 20% using AI. And by December 2022, that number is at 50% or higher. We know that things are only going to accelerate. The last piece here about McKinsey that I wanted to touch on is about high performers. High performers are those organizations that are seeing the biggest bottom line revenue impact from AI adoption. So 20% or more of their earnings from AI use. The proportion of respondents falling into that group has remained at only about 8%. So only about 8% of the businesses that they're surveying, the best and biggest businesses in the world, are seeing 20% or more of their earnings come from AI. And this produces an asymmetric opportunity. Remember, we're talking about investments now. Kind of my biggest takeaway to wrap this up for you guys is, for those of you familiar with my work, you understand the fourth turning thesis. I already explained it. In our instance, I see AI being very closely integrated into the fabric of what the new system will look like and perform like. The writing's already on the wall. It's already happening. And that's why it's kind of blowing my mind. Like, not enough people are talking about it. Not enough people are doing anything about it. Not enough people are positioning themselves to capitalize on it. And so that's a big piece of why I'm creating this section, to make you guys aware of some of the opportunities that you can benefit from if you're early and prepared, wink, wink. So if you can recognize that only 8% of big business is currently considered a high performer when it comes to AI investment and return on that investment, and you can see the writing on the wall surrounding what the next 50 plus years are going to look like in terms of work, economics, the monetary system, our medium of exchange, technology, culture, etc. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize the opportunity that we all have at hand right now, 2023, when most people are in despair, fear, and confusion. I am not in any way, because I study the future consistently. And it's an extremely exciting time to be alive, guys. Most big business companies are sandbagging their reinvestment back into research and development and the future. They're trying to minimize costs so that they can appease their short-term investors and board members, using their profits to buy back their own stocks, which artificially pumps the price, or they may be paying out dividends instead of using that money to reinvest back into R&D. In other words, if you don't understand any of what I just said, they're doing all of the old existing systems go-to plays. You know, the thing that is just normal to do. It's not questioned. It's like, oh yeah, you always do that. That's the problem. And innovation disrupts that. So the companies that are continuing to do that are leaving themselves extremely vulnerable, because there are a select handful of exceptional companies that have such a large lead when it comes to AI, machine learning, and the sheer amount of data and feedback hours that their AI has already learned from. We're sitting in a generational opportunity sweet spot as we start 2023. People do not give out this kind of information publicly because people seem to be so enthralled with money that they want you to pay them to learn things like this. But in 2023, one of the things that we're going to be doing is disrupting that model and giving you guys all the sauce for free. So if you've been finding this valuable, once again, please like this video, make sure that you're subscribed, and share the video with a friend. That is all that we ask to continue putting out this high-level content. I put over 25 hours of research and preparation into this one episode that we do not make $1 off of. We don't monetize, nothing. So hopefully you guys are still with me. Let's kind of continue what I'm saying here. I'm extremely excited, and I just hope that that is being conveyed and that you can understand why. It's not all doom and gloom. We don't have to curl up in the fetal position and just hope things get better. Things are going to get better. It's scary. Change is scary. I agree. Neuralink scares the shit out of me. Some of the AI concepts, I get it. It's fucking creepy. But at the same time, You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I've told you guys from day one on this channel, we need more conscious multimillionaires sitting at these tables to make decisions that are currently being made for us by people who don't give a shit and who are ran by their tyrannical egos. One of the only realistic ways for a large amount of us to get there financially is to leverage asymmetric, exponential investment opportunities. And I haven't seen one bigger than this in the 500 years of history that I've studied. Even the Roaring 20s is paled in comparison to what we're currently going through. And I am afraid and concerned that my brothers and sisters are so wrapped up in their daily life dramas, fears, and money problems that you will overlook and under-prioritize this life-changing information that I am giving you. And I promise you, when you look back in 2030 on the information that you came across today, you will deeply regret if you do not take massive action on this. If you understand that 92% of big businesses are still doing things this way, there's only 8% of what's considered a McKinsey high performer when it comes to the adoption and ROI on AI. The behavior I just described is equivalent to big business investing into Social Security and a pension so you can have a nice retirement at 65. It's using that old mindset, right? It's that boomer mindset that doesn't make sense to anyone who's a millennial or Gen Z. It's outdated, and it's in the middle of being massively disrupted, massively, in a way that 99% of people are just not fucking ready for. And that's why I get so hyped about this stuff. So I want to kind of wrap things up there. I want to try to just bring it all together and be very honest and transparent with you all. So here are my thoughts. Number one, AI is going to change technology, society, the workforce, how people earn money, if people earn money, and how business and investing is done from the ground up. I believe this to be, and I'm going on the record saying this repeatedly, I believe this to be the biggest opportunity that we've had since the Roaring 20s, but bigger, in presenting the opportunity to reinvent yourself, change your lineage for the next 100+ years, or experience exponential capitalistic, entrepreneurial, or investor success, depending your lane. But it will require you to accurately place your bets on the future and execute consistently. I am concerned for the millions of citizens in first world countries who are so complacent and obedient that when they get proposed UBI and a central bank digital currency, they gobble it up and are ecstatic to do so because they're going to come with perks, right? CBDC might come with your first $1,000 free. UBI is free money. People don't think. If you don't psychoanalyze the tactics being used, if you don't have a sound understanding of history, if you don't understand what free rewards for the people have always been used for, if you study history, that is definitely a concern for me. Once again, it's not going to happen to me or my loved ones, but we are all one. We are all the same. And so this is me doing my part. I am particularly fascinated by and excited to witness the disruption, the massive disruption of the school and education system, the job and the workforce, and how we relate to money as a species. This idea of trading your time for money, it's only 120, 140 years old. I don't think people realize that. It's a new concept, and it's about to get disrupted already. And that type of stuff is exciting to me. It's fascinating to me. It makes me stoked and grateful and humbled to be alive, to just get to go on this journey, to just live it, to be here for it, rather than trying to bypass it and denounce it and label it and call it bad and call it satanic, whatever it may be. I'm here for the human experience, and I trust that you're here for that as well. I know AI scares the shit out of a lot of you, especially the conscious community that I already addressed, which is most of you who are watching my channel. Y'all are my people. But as you can see, I not only do not fear these changes, but I embrace and support them. And that doesn't make me any less spiritual. It actually has allowed me to become a leader of countless conscious people, because so many of us have gotten sucked into some of these psyops around denouncing money, denouncing wealth, denouncing the world, denouncing technology. And I did it too. I had a season of that, but I snapped out of it. And I really think the spiritual community, the spiritual space is going through a really unique opportunity right now since 2020, where we're having an opportunity to reintegrate healthier aspects of the masculine. And I view technology and AI and our relationship to the systems and everything as the masculine. And so just like many of us were too on the masculine and then we swung to rebel heavily feminine, and a lot of you are coming out of that now, many of our students as well. I resonate deeply with that. That's been my experience as well. We're having an opportunity to be more centered, to not be such an extremist of the masculine or an extremist of the feminine who's protesting and denouncing money and living off grid, which is awesome. I'm just using an example. But be more balanced and centered and understanding that technology has its place. AI can really help our species and our consciousness even. It can even expand and lead to deeper levels of awakening, depending how we use it. So it all comes back to whoever has the money gets to make the decisions. So hopefully you guys see where I'm coming at this stuff from. We need you. I need you. I can't do this alone. I can't make the decisions alone. We have to be able to pool money. We have to have our own communities. We have to have our seats at these tables, but that takes money. And it also takes an understanding of the world, an understanding of these technologies, and not being so dissociated from it all that others can't relate to us, don't want to do business with us, don't trust us. We don't have levels of influence over people. These are all important things. So I say all that to say that if you consider yourself spiritual or religious, I want you to consider this. If you believe in a higher power, does that higher power not already know everything that is going to happen before it has happened? Yes or no? I mean, God created the entire universe into existence with his mere intention and word. So who are we, puny little ants living on a rock, swirling around the universe at 1,000,000 miles a second? Who are we to think that God would make a mistake or has made a mistake? People get so zoomed in and we forget that God created us and we created AI. So guess what? God created AI. And this is just one example of how easy it is to experience spiritual distortion and spiritually bypass difficult conversations that make us feel emotions because it brings things up for us. It triggers us. We project. We let our animal self run the show. We don't give things chances. We create a belief about something and then we seek out information after that fact to reaffirm our existing biases. But if you really sit with this, and I've really sat with this, believe me, I understand how controversial this is. I know some of you are going to freak out in the comments, and that's fine. That has everything to do with you, and that's fine. But this is really what dawned on me. We were created in God's image, right? And for whatever reason, God programmed us in our very DNA with this incessant, endless need for evolution, improvement, and advancement. Another way of saying that is the concept of evolution. We can't fight against that. It's in our very DNA. And if you were to zoom out, let's say you're an alien looking down on Earth and you're just watching the human species. That's one of the first things you would notice. These people are obsessed with building, growing. They seem to have to create. They have to do more. They're unable to just not expand, evolve, etc. Now, I'm not saying that in a necessarily positive or negative sense. I'm just saying that is what is programmed into us. And God is the one who programmed us. If there's one thing we do, we iterate, we build, we improve, and we evolve. It took us hundreds of thousands of years to get to the point where we created a dial-up computer. And now AI is here, and it is going to massively speed up that trajectory. It's easy to forget that nature optimizes for the whole, not any one person. Nature doesn't give a flying fuck about what you think, about what I think, about what your entire community thinks. It doesn't care about a certain race. It doesn't care about a certain community. It doesn't care about a certain state. It doesn't care about a certain nation. It cares about the whole of life. And it optimizes for the entire species. So for whatever reason, it wanted AI, because whether we created it or it created us, it's up for debate. And I'm quite frankly not really sure. I can see both ways. I understand both perspectives. But what isn't up for debate is that all of it was created by the creator, which leads me to my ultimate point in conclusion. You can either live from love or you can live from fear. You can either have faith and trust in your creator and in God's divine plan, or you can allow your ego to doubt it all, to try to control the world around you, and to default into the ego's narcissistic tendencies to think that it is the center of the universe. And if it doesn't like something, then how dare others like it? We can't support that. We forget because this I construct hijacks us and we think we're it. We're really our opinions. We're really our preferences. And we forget that none of this is our say, first off. And second off, the creator created all of this, and everything that comes through us and everything that we'll ever experience and can possibly experience, it was written, as they say, right? It was written. It was written long before your ego came into existence, and it will be written long after. So who are we to protest God's plan? That is my question. And this is what I have ultimately come to upon reflecting the last few months on artificial intelligence and where exactly I stand in terms of this unique time period of human history that we will look back on as one of the most pivotal, important times in our race. So I know which of those I'm going to choose. I'm always going to choose love, and I'm going to choose to trust my creator. But ultimately, each of you have to make that decision for yourself. Peace and love, everyone.